If you have been following along with the Torah reading, then you'll know that this week's parashah of Vayigash brings us to the end of the cliffhanger. We left the very end of the parashah last week with Benjamin being caught red-handed with this wacky vizier's silver cup in his bag, being dragged before him, and now being said, "You will be my slave." Of course, we know that it's a ruse, but the 10 other brothers do not. They only know that if they don't come back with Benjamin, that their father will probably die of shock from losing yet another son in such a horrible way. And unfortunately, many people, when analyzing this parashah, seem to take what happens next in Vayigash as a foregone conclusion, as inevitable. And certainly it was inevitable, or else we wouldn't be here. But that doesn't mean it appeared inevitable to the brothers at the moment. When Judah steps forward to discuss the issue with this vizier, Joseph in disguise, he did not know what would happen. He was trying to make a decision and realize that means he had options. So let's examine the options that he had. Here you are, Judah, the titular leader of the people that have come down, and you need to decide how to approach this vizier. Your brother Benjamin, the beloved of your father, has been caught with this goblet. You already know something's funny up, because after all, you ended up with magic money back in your bag last time you were here. So you're not entirely sure what's at play, but you definitely know you are no match for the nation of Egypt, which is what you are up against. So option number one says, well, Benjamin is one guy, so we leave him here. Yes, it's not fair. Yes, this Egyptian guy is crazy and has it out for us. He's playing games, but we cut our losses. We leave Benjamin behind. We gather up the food, which is the reason we're here in the first place, and we leg it back to the land of Canaan, and we feed everybody so that they can survive during the famine. And if our father dies from the shock of losing Benjamin, then we can chalk up one more crime to this vizier of Egypt, but it really shouldn't be on our conscience. We did everything possibly right, and this was the only option to come down to find food here, and this is the only way we can get out with minimum casualties. What is the alternative? To let everyone die? To stay here and complain and protest? No. Take the food, say goodbye to Benjamin, head home, and suffer the consequences with your father, but at least you'll have food for the people. Option number one. Option number two, well, do we leave Benjamin behind? No. We cannot do that to our father again. After all, it weighs heavily on our conscience that we already deprived him of one son when we sold Joseph off into slavery. And it was kind of our big mouth that let this guy know that there was another son. If we had just not mentioned it, maybe none of this would have happened. Why should Benjamin suffer for our indiscretion? Why should our father suffer another loss to be added to the one that we already caused? And again, we have to do something because they need food. We can't just sit and do nothing. So we will offer ourselves up in exchange. We will plead for mercy for our father, plead for mercy for the young man Benjamin, and offer the 10 of us in exchange for the one of him. And then he and the food can go back to the people in Canaan, who will be able to live, to eat, and we will become slaves of this madman. Option number two. Which one do you pick? I know which one Judah actually picks, and the brothers going along with it. But which one would you pick and why? Stick with your brother, meaning...
Yeah, I would want to take my brother with us.
But that doesn't seem to be an option. This crazy guy is not letting all 11 of you out of there. It's either 1 stays and 10 go, or 10 stays and 1 goes. It doesn't seem to be a middle position. I mean, after all, even if you had a daring Ocean's 11, or would it be Egypt Nile 11 style heist to be able to get Benjamin and to get the grain and head out really fast, riding your donkeys, you have an entire nation behind you. You have all of Egypt under this vizier. It's not like this is some petty bureaucrat. This is the number 2 in the entire country. Do you really think the guy who's been toying with you is just going to let you go? Just going to let you go back to Canaan and say, well, they went over the border, so we don't have jurisdiction? No. He is going to hunt you down. This is not an option. And if you lead him and his troops back to Canaan, what's going to happen to your families there? It's not like the Egyptians are forgiving. So, option 1, leave Benjamin behind and suffer the consequences at home. Option 2, send Benjamin back and leave yourselves behind as a substitute for him. It's not an easy choice, is it? And as my great teacher, Rabbi Dorf, told us, that's why it's called a dilemma. Right? A dilemma is when you have a difficult choice. And dilemmas are precisely where you need guidance. Anyone can make a choice when it's easy, but when it's hard, either because you have 2 good options and you have to decide between them, or you have 2 bad options and you have to decide between them, this is what is a dilemma, and this is where we define our character. And we see in the resolution, at least for Judah's perspective, of his character coming to the fore, his character being revealed, much like you might find gold in the bottom of a pan. Here is a man who has been selfish time and time again, selling his brother, cheating his daughter-in-law Tamar, finally stepping forward now to be selfless. And doing so because he cannot stand the idea of causing another person pain, not cause his father pain. He knows what it's like to lose a child. He has already had to bury 2 of them. And now he is faced with the possibility of sending home grief to his father again? No. Especially not when, as he and the other brothers have already admitted, he feels like this is just fitting punishment for what they did to Joseph in the first place. And feeling that weight on his conscience, he cannot allow himself to get away with it. He cannot allow himself to escape. Even if it's unfair, even if it is unjust, if anyone has to suffer, he decides it will be him. And the other brothers, likewise, decide they too will do that. Is this the right choice? Well, no. There was no right or wrong choice. They could have said, keep Benjamin. The needs of the rest of us outweigh his, and you're obviously a lunatic, so what can we do? But they chose instead to offer themselves in exchange, not because it was the obvious thing to do, not because it was the only moral thing to do. There was no perfect answer to the conundrum that Joseph had put them in. But because for themselves and the history that they had gone through, this was the only thing that they could stomach as part of their conscience. This was the only way they could see themselves behaving if they were truly going to be good people. That history that led them to this point, that ultimately was also the reason that they were liberated. Because they had experienced and learned from those experiences all the trouble and suffering that had come ever since they had their rivalry with Joseph and the sale of their brother, they were now in a position to answer this vizier in a way that turned out to be the key that would unlock everything. Sometimes the dilemmas are not obvious of what we should do. It is why they are a dilemma. But if we think carefully on where we have been and the path we have walked, sometimes we can find the right answer for us. And sometimes the rightness of that answer may not be easy to stomach, but in the long term, it will work out better. Shabbat Shalom.